gone down a little bit. But in terms of just stupid defensive errors, I think Arsenal wins. There's no way you can claim Spurs makes more dumb mistakes. Well,
I do. You answered too quickly because of Aurier, dude. Your Aurier is a waste.
Yeah, so Serge Aurier is a problem. Aurier, that guy. Oh my word. Oh.
Hugo Lloris.
Oh.
No, I think
Arsenal. I don't know.
Usually Arsenal this season, I think it's closer, dude.
As much as Lloris and Aurier make gang mistakes, I have to agree to
so if we're talking about this season, it's comparable. But like historically, it's an Arsenal.
No. You can't say historically because your team has no history, bro. Like that's unfair.
Right. That's where we will stop the podcast. But guys, and welcome to the Whipping It In podcast, the podcast you didn't ask for. And today we're joined by the Back Five podcast team.
Thank you. Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm Cameron. We have two Cams, but the other one's not here. But yeah, I support Manchester United, and check out the Back Five if you're interested.
I'm Don. Long time Arsenal fan and everything. I'm also part of the Back Five, and I'm happy to collaborate with the Whipping It In podcast today.
Yeah, so just jumping into it. So what we're going to talk about is the top six, so-called top six now, because we're all, not in the top six technically. And so from the start of the season, it was between Chelsea, United, Liverpool, Man City, Man United, Arsenal, and who's going to get into that sort of top four position to get into the Champions League games. And when looking at it, we're just going to sort of evaluate our own teams, look at sort of the good, bad, and the ugly, if you'd like to hear, who's done well, and even give a sort of rating, if you'd like, on A, B, C, D, where you think your team performed and possible signings or things to do better in the future. And so I myself is representing Chelsea. Lewis will be representing Liverpool. Cameron is going to be supporting United. Tando is Spurs, and Don is Arsenal. So we've got quite a house in store for you guys, and Avengers assembled. I just wanted to say that. So the way we'll start off is by league positions, and because we haven't got a Man City fan, just talking between us, but Lewis, starting off with Liverpool. Obviously, you guys are top of the league. How does it feel?
I think if I was to give Liverpool a grading, it would be very easy, like A+. There's nothing much like Liverpool could have done, except from like not losing against Watford at Vicarage Road. That would have been like the topping on the cake, get the Invincibles. But overall, like it's been a very good season for Liverpool. So we've got there was 82 points at the moment with 20 games played. You got 64 goals scored. You got 21 goals let in. It's very little that Liverpool can improve on. Maybe like a few of the squad players may look into leaving, such as Shaqiri, so really strengthening that positions. But in terms of like next season and future transfers, there's very little like Liverpool can change, or very minor changes. But you can also look into like if you look into this transfers rumours about Timo Werner coming to Liverpool. And there's so many different signings that we could have made, but also January made a few signings as well, such as Minamino. But I think going for next season, I think a lot of the teams are coming back up. So like Man City, they're not going to be, they're coming back stronger next season. So that's really vital. So they got Laporte back, and that's going to be really vital for Man City and something for Liverpool to think about for next season.
Lewis, just jumping onto it. Is there, so we just spoke generally about good, but in terms of players, has there been anyone in particular that stood out for you in regards to that?
I think like definitely Liverpool's been good as collectively, so we're not only doing good up front, so scoring 66 goals, but also letting them the least amount of goals in, so 24. So it's a whole collective players like team of players, but if you want to look at like special players, like individual players, so you're looking at Sadio Mane with his goal scoring record. You got Alisson at the back goalkeeping. You got Adrian, who did really well when he had to debutise over Alisson when he was injured, and then also you got Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertsons. So overall, like it's been a very good season. Yeah, for us.
And obviously, you mentioned Timo Werner as a possible transfer, and some things positive, but there are obviously some negatives, and you have lost to Watford. And some things could be pointed out that squad depth isn't strong enough, as an possible argument, and the fact that you guys didn't compete in, let's say, for example, the FA Cup, even Champions League, League Cup, could that be a criticism as well of Liverpool that, yes, okay, you're going to focus on the league, you haven't won that in 30 years, but when looking at competitive teams throughout Premier League history, it's not just winning a Premier League, it's this and an FA Cup, this and a Champions League, or this is our treble. Do you feel that is a weakness of Liverpool squad depth, or what do you see?
I think there's definitely a gearance towards more the Premier League, so especially like cup runs and Carling Cups, the FA Cups, we put a weekend side out and put a more youthful team out in emphasis of the Premier League. For example, we had the emergence of Curtis Jones, and we put a lot of like youthful players into the FA Cup, Carling Cup. So it was definitely for this season, I think it was Jurgen Klopp's emphasis to win the Premier League. So many like years we haven't won it, and this is something we were looking towards. But in terms of like, we have added in strength, so like, such as Minamino, he's coming in January, and he will like, he's looking to like, is a cover for Salah and Mane, so definitely look towards that. But in terms of the summer transfers, it's very, very unpredictable given like the coronavirus and how that affects like financial situations for all the clubs.
As a whole, I think you could maybe make an argument that they would have liked to have gone further in the Champions League and a few of the other competitions. But when you really look at it, I think their main goal this season was the Prem. They've been bantered about it for years. They won the Champions League last year. So even though they didn't go all the way and they haven't really done that well in the Champions League, it doesn't really matter. I think in terms of their goals at the beginning of the season, I think they've been phenomenal. And unfortunately, I would have to give them an A star. I think they've been fantastic.
There's not much to add on what Cameron said. I mean, really, they showed vulnerabilities in the Champions League. They were definitely beatable. But again, they achieved what they wanted to. Well, they would have achieved what they wanted to achieve, and they're possibly going to achieve what they want to achieve in winning the Premier League. So I can't really give them anything less than an A star. There's an argument for giving them just an A, but I think the A star really works. Easily been the best team in the Premier League this season.
Yeah, I have to agree with what everyone else is saying. And even from a Liverpool fan's perspective, form this season, although they got knocked out in Champions League, I mean, like Cam said, they won it last season. So they really haven't been a shortage of trophies for Liverpool fans. So an A-star is well deserved. They've been far better than what anyone thought they really could have been.
A would be good. Looking at the last minute winners, looking at how we've kept less clean sheets than last season, this season has just been a very results-based season, whereas maybe our playing quality was a bit better last season. We weren't having so many last minute winners, had a bit more clean sheets, had a bit more defensive stability. Then the results are better this season.
Yeah. So jumping on to the next team within the top six in terms of rankings is Manchester City. So when thinking about Manchester, they've, as we know, massively dropped off. So many reasons to it. See I think the biggest loss is probably Kompany. Losing such a leader at centre back probably affects the team so much, as we've seen. The fact that they've had to make a makeshift defence. And I think defense is probably the biggest issue because Ederson is a wonderful, wonderful goalkeeper. I really like him. He can play out with the ball. But when the defense in front of him isn't confident, and the fact that it shifts and changes, and I believe Guardiola doesn't want to play Otamendi and Stones because they're too mistake prone. And the fact that Fernandinho's had to go into centre back, it just shows a lot of issues with the club. But nobody really expected that. I think everyone was, expecting Man City to not be as bad as a 25-point difference.
I think, like you said, there was one of the biggest reasons was I think there was no stability this season. If you look at their run last season, they had a pretty consistent team and they didn't change it too much. And I feel like this season they've just got a lot of key injuries, and then Pep's been overthinking it a little bit, I think, trying to chase Klopp, and he's been mixing around the team too much. And I think that they've lost that chemistry that they had, because if you look at the back, they lost Laporte, which is an amazing, it's a terrible loss for them, sorry. And then he's been trying to play around with Fernandinho and playing Rodri and then switching between the two and changing formations. And Mendy can't stay fit, so he's in and out, and he can't choose which is his best left back. Sané got injured. So I just feel like there was so many different factors, and then because of the pressure Klopp was putting on Pep, I think he kind of panicked a little bit, and he started overthinking and chopping and changing too much. So I think that's the reasoning behind them dropping points.
Look, it's a very complex thing here. There's a lot of factors at play in terms of Man City's sort of drop off this season. But like I said, with comparing them to a smaller team like Sheffield, a team that got the defensive aspect of their game right, compared to City, which just didn't, that's kind of where City's downfall came. If you can't stop the goals from going in on your side, you're not going to win games. You're not going to get championship points. And that's exactly what this has showed. Them being 25 points or so behind Liverpool. It's, a massive disappointment on their side. And like Cam said, it's down to the defense mostly. And that can be partly attributed to them missing company a lot.
Personally, I just feel like although their attack is not as good as last season, they're still first in the league in terms of goals scored. I think they're ahead of Liverpool by 3 or something, so not by a lot compared to last season, but they're still first in the league. And then in terms of the defense, I just feel it's kind of unfair to compare them to a team like Sheffield, like Tando said, who got their defensive aspect of the game correct. Sheffield has the second least amount of goals conceded, only behind league leaders Liverpool, which is something amazing, And City's never been a team of high defensive caliber, Like you said, I do remember Pep being criticized for rather passing the ball out instead of having his defenders clear it and everything. But I don't think that's necessarily the reason to his downfall this season. I think it's just it's purely on the injuries, the lack of chemistry, the constant changing up of the lineups and stuff like that.
Maybe they were focusing more to the Champions League, and they won the first leg against Real Madrid. So maybe they thought they won it so many times, let's move on to the Champions League now. Especially with the potential 2-year ban of Champions League, maybe that's their more focus now. For example, like the 2-year Champions League ban, that could be a massive part of Man City's history for a few of the players are thinking of leaving. So whether this plays into play, so also Sergio Aguero isn't young as well. So is he going to stay for the number of years? So it's interesting to see where Man City going from now with the transfer ban and the Champions League ban.
Yeah, so we'll just give a quick rating of Man City's season so far. I'm going to give it a B. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, as everyone's put out there. If the season was to continue, Champions League was to continue, they still have a run within that competition. League that I believe they solidified second position, close enough. And I believe they won the League Cup, haven't they?
I think I'm going to have to give them a B- just because of their performance in the league and the drop-off. But I don't think that's... I just think it was nothing compared to what they were hoping for. And I just think that they didn't accomplish the goals they were looking to accomplish. I think it is probably a B-, and I think they're all very disappointed.
I'm
going to give them a B+, simply because to compare them to Liverpool is just ridiculous. This Liverpool team is cheating. These guys are cheating. Just one of the looks from the surface, I really think they had a solid season, so B+.
Don.
I'm gonna have to agree with Tando there. My rating's also B+. I know it's kind of a reach, but like this City team this season kind of reminds me of Liverpool about 4 seasons ago, where they would leak goals a lot. And when you watch them play, it looks like they're just trying to outscore the opponents, and most games end up being high-scoring games. I feel like City's demise isn't down to like one thing, so I can't give them like a.
I'll probably say B, maybe B+. I mean, they are still second. You know, the best of the best.
Yeah, so I'll just piggyback everyone else. So like B+, so you're talking about like the injuries of important players and how it's affected the season. So yeah, B+, man.
Cool. So we're going to jump off to the best team in the world, Chelsea, who are in fourth position now. But for me, I think with Frank Lampard coming into the mix, it's been a bit of a breath of fresh air. We're using the youth a lot more, and that's probably the biggest thing. So I just want to talk about some statistics and some things. So 29 league games played. We've won 14, drawn 6, lost 9, scored 51 goals and conceded 39. So you probably know where I'm going with this in terms of the weaknesses. 3 points above United, so who knows what happens in that sort of race. We've introduced to a 4-2-3-1 formation, so a Christmas tree formation where I think it's really suited, I think, players like Jorginho really well, whereas last season it was kind of him at that holding CDM position in Sarri's. I think he's flourished really well. And as well, we couldn't sign any players. We did get the ban uplifted, but we didn't do anything in the end with it. So I think for me, one of the really great things that we've done is, again, just talking about it earlier, introduction of youth. And that's probably, saved us a lot of money so that we can play other players in other areas. Tammy Bad Boy Abraham, 13 goals this season. And he's, there was a scare that he wouldn't, because he's wearing that Chelsea number 9 shirt. There's a lot of scare around that. But the 3 because he didn't score in three games, so everyone's a bit worried. The introduction on the right back position of Reece James, I think he's a superb player, crosses well, defends excellently, and the game that highlights for me is that 4-4 against Ajax, where they got 2 red cards, but then Reece made a superb comeback. Mason Mount, I think he's going to take a bit more time to grow into the games. He's had a good fast start, but he's dipped, and I think the most recent one would be Billy Gilmour, the Scottish midfielder. Everyone's talking about him being a Jorginho replacement in the future. Not yet, but maybe in the future. He's really exciting prospect, keeps the ball ticking. And a couple players, I think, for me, that I've really loved is Kovacic, and I feel like he could play in any midfield in the world. He has that sort of fluid tenacity of a Spanish player where they're, like that Barcelona tiki-taka football. He would fit in so well because his first touch is easy, glides through, can cut through the middle, and he just takes us out of so many bad situations. I've really loved Kovacic, but for me, I just want to, this is me being a bit with my Chelsea hat on. Talking about Jorginho and his, how he stepped up as a sort of player, and I think his highlight was the 2 penalties against Ajax, and in general, his penalties, I love watching them. You don't know what he's going to do. He has that Balotelli aspect of his penalties. He takes that stutter last minute. But it's not all good. The defence has conceded 39 goals this season. And, there's a mix-up between, is it Kepa's, is it the defence? I think there's a mix of everything. There's a loss of communication and confidence between everyone. I don't know if Kepa is speaking Spanish and Zuma is speaking French or what's going on, but it's just that lack of communication that's Batshuayi as well, the senior side of the team. He hasn't done really well. 16 appearances, 1 goal, 1 assist. I just feel like we can't rely on him, so we might need to look towards selling him. And Emerson is so just speaking about Emerson, I feel like he's the ultimate epitome of like being young, hot, and Brazilian. Like he must be at the clubs or something, but ever since he was in London in a few months, he's just changed his dynamics. He hasn't been playing as well. So left back, I think, for Chelsea is a huge, huge issue. So I'd give them, I don't want to say as good as Liverpool, but maybe a B, solid B.
The big factor for me was the 9 losses and then the 39 goals they let in. And that's a massive factor when you look into sides that are similar position to them. I think I'm looking at Leicester City now. They're only letting 28 goals. Manchester United letting 30 goals. So there's a big problem in terms of like the defence for Chelsea. And it will be interesting to see how they resolve that issue. Is that an issue with personnel, or is it the goalkeeping issue? So that's a massive, big factor that I feel like Chelsea need to improve on. But I think in terms of their achievements to get into the Champions League, the famed fourth place, I think they sealed it for this season. So in terms of that, I say probably a B.
Yeah, I give them a B minus. Yeah, B minus.
I think Chelsea have actually had a very good season, considering what they wanted to do was just hold serve in terms of their position, kind of remain in that top 4. Because think about the circumstances at the beginning of the season. New manager, they had a transfer ban, so they couldn't bring in much in the way of talent. And I think that, obviously the problems that they have defensively can't be ignored. And also there's a pretty blatant lack of experience in that team. But with the summer transfer window coming up, they have the opportunity to solve that. So I think they've actually had a very good season. And I'm going to actually say A minus. Wouldn't be a full-on A if they just would iron out those defensive issues. But I think Chelsea had a great showing, in my opinion.
That blue hat isn't a Chelsea logo on it, is it? No. Okay. Cam, what?
Yeah, I'm going to go along the same lines. I'm going to go along the same lines as Tando. I just think that it's credit to what Lampard's done, just the fact that people have almost forgotten that Chelsea had a transfer ban. A lot of people have actually kind of forgotten it and just focused on the football he's trying to play. And I think you do just have to give him time. He's a new young manager, and you can definitely see what he's trying to do. That's the beautiful thing about watching Chelsea right now. There's no real end product when they're attacking, but that will come. And their defense is a little bit shaky, as you mentioned. But the important bit is that their style of play is there. They look like they're kind of building something. And I think that they have far exceeded any expectations they had at the beginning of the season, considering all the different circumstances they had. So I'm going to say A minus, maybe even leaning towards an A. I think they've had a very good season.
So, Tammy Abraham's been a revelation. I don't think experience is an issue, because if you look at their squad, they've got, people like Azpilicueta. He's already won Butler Premier League. N'Golo Kante won at Leicester, won at Chelsea. Look at their attack: Willian, Giroud, Pedro. I think the problem is probably they have a bit too much experience. Like, their squad is a little bit on the aging side. So players like Callum Hudson-Odoi, like Tammy Abraham, like that Billy kid, the Scottish dude. It provides a breath of fresh air into what is an otherwise aging team, and they've got a lot of contracts expiring up this season. So they want to, move on with those, either re-sign the players or start looking into get replacements. Hakim Ziyech is coming in the summer now. He's going to be an exciting signing. We've seen him play well for Ajax, so it's going to be, really interesting to see what he can do in the Premier League. So, it can only go up here. They've done well with the limitations. So next season, they won't have these limitations. Lampard will have a year of managerial experience under his belt. They can go out and find players. Should they? Probably not. Their own players are doing pretty well. But yeah, good season. B plus, maybe A minus.
Ole's at the wheel. I believe 5th position. Signed Bruno Fernandes, and probably that's, change your fate in some ways. Started winning. I just feel, not to put down to any of the other teams, but I just feel like with Leicester and Chelsea, we haven't been as consistent in terms of winning in the last 2-3 months. So that's probably a reason why Arsenal, United, Tottenham to an extent have sort of clawed their way back into this race. But yeah, with United, I just feel with Fernandes, he's kind of changed their fortunes a little bit. But
yeah, I mean, it's been a very up and down season. It's been very frustrating. It just almost feels like we can't gain that traction we need. We were always struggling to put together 2 wins or 3 wins. I can't even remember how long it took us to put together 2 wins in a row. It was ridiculous. So it's just been kind of up and down the whole time. And I also think that we losing Pogba right at the beginning, not having him for a large majority of the season, was huge for us because Oli was persistent on playing this 4-2-1-3 with 2 CDMs. But you need a pivotal number 10 if you want to play that formation. You need someone who's going to unlock a door. And Paul wasn't there. So we were really, really struggling to create chances. And that's why we've only scored 44 goals, which is like 1.5 goals a game as an average, which is not what you want for a team that should be in the top 4, should be competing. So I feel like we've really struggled to create the chances, and we've really struggled to kind of implement what Oli is trying to create. And I think that's due to a lack of personnel, and then also I don't even like the formation. I don't think we should be playing 2 CDMs, especially at home against the lower teams. But that's where Bruno's made a really, really big impact. We needed a number 10, and I'm so glad that he's come in. I think he's made a huge, huge impact, and you're starting to see now that things are starting to click a bit more. We hadn't lost, I think, since Bruno came in, which is a really good stat to kind of look at. But I'm not getting too, gassed about it, because you have to kind of look at the bigger picture, and it is a honeymoon period. Everyone's feeling a bit more, up because Bruno's in, and it can dip again. And we've seen Oli always goes on runs for some reason. I would probably have to say that we've been lucky to even be in 5th. It's just all the people around us haven't had a really good season. And based on that and our performances, I think I'd have to give us probably like a B-, maybe even a C+ for United standards. I think we've been quite atrocious, to be honest. I feel like we have, obviously there's always things you can improve on, but I think we still have the 2nd most clean sheets in Europe this season, as a whole, not just in the league. I'm talking about everything, which has actually been a lot better than our last season. I think Harry's actually done a really good job. He got a lot of criticism at the beginning, but I think he's actually kind of grown into that role, and I think he's helped to solidify things a little bit. And then the boys there know my feelings about Wan-Bissaka. I absolutely love the guy. Yes, he is crazy. So a phenomenal signing, and I actually do think we've got a pretty good base to work from.
I'm gonna go on the low end and just say straight up C. There really hasn't been a season where I've been blown away by the football they're playing. Like Cam said, the only reason they're 5th is because some of the results have gone their way. Some of the results have just gone their way, and they're lucky to be up there, to be honest. Bruno Fernandes is, looks like he's on the way to pulling them back up. Who knows? By the end of the season, it might change to a B, but for now, I have not been impressed at all by them. So C.
Don.
I might have to agree with Tando. Man United started the season really poorly. Very, very bad beginning to the season. So I'm gonna have to give them a C as well. Bruno coming in has livened up the team. Because watching their games was quite hard. I won't lie, it was quite a task. Their style of football has been reduced to I don't even know what to call it really. But Bruno Fernandes has livened things up. But we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves and say that he's there to save them. I feel like they're still lacking in a few places.
I'd say like a C+. So like the aim for the beginning of the season was to look at the Champions League football, and given like Man City's ban, maybe they can just sneak it through like at 5th place. So ultimately, if they do get Champions League football, is that a good win for Man United? And I think it is. They're very, very close to it, and it's just.
I'll give a balanced review. Yes, it's C, maybe C+. I mean, despite everything, they are still 4th, which, Arsenal or Tottenham can't say. And, maybe you'd looked at one of them being above Manchester United at the start of the season. Harry Maguire still has a ways to go before he fully earns up to his price tag. Wan-Bissaka, there's been a lot of rave about him. I don't see it, but he's not bad right back, but he's not like, Cafu or anything. Scott McTominay has featured heavily this season. I think he's done well, and you look at their best players, Marcus Rashford and Daniel James, they've done really well. So they've got a lot of promise for the future. Do they still want Ole at the wheel? I don't know. I feel like ever since his honeymoon period finished, it's like the rose tinted spectacles came off, isn't it? And now they're struggling, to maintain any sort of consistency. And I'm pretty sure their highlight was drawn against Liverpool. So there hasn't been any spectacles this season, anything of note. It's been a very middling performance. Some flashes, something, just to like make the Manchester United fans excited, maybe for next season. Really, with the amount of money they've poured into this team, they should be doing better. And Jesse Lingard still hasn't scored, so
there's too much love. I think the issue is for me when a manager, even with Lampard, right? If it comes to that point where you need to sack, it's a difficult decision where you love the player because of his history and what he's done, but then are you going to be objective, right? So there's that debate of objective versus subjective, whether feelings or whether numbers make sense. And I feel like if you looked at it objectively, any United manager, right, if they had this type of record that Ole has, Van Gaal, Mourinho, there would be a different uproar. But because it's Ole, there's a bit more leniency towards him. And I guess with Lampard, we'll see if it comes to that stage. But I just, if I had to pick a letter, I'd give it a D. So Tottenham Hotspur, 40 points, I believe 8th in the league, a point above Arsenal right now. Probably one of the biggest turmoils in the club. A lot of injuries. Which is a massive factor towards why the team hasn't done as well. Obviously now you've got Mourinho, the issue with spending and the owners, and then Daniel Levy being a bit cheap, not letting you guys spend. You do need to replenish the squad, and I think it's something we mentioned on another podcast that we did on how Sir Alex Ferguson used to like buy a top player to put the other players on their sort of toes, and Tottenham hasn't really been able to do that. Where Kane's always been seen as the main man, and Song's been there. Do you get it? So when you have another player that comes in at top level, that just gives the other players in the club like, a bit of that worry. Do you feel? Just asking about it. What is the good, bad, and any areas of improvement and of rating? So go ahead.
We spoke about this on one of our episodes in our shows too, and one of the things that came up was the problem with Spurs has been this season. It's not necessarily a problem with their playing style, but it's these small individual errors from certain players that just lead to us leaking goals, unnecessary goals. And we were never a team that was going to score 4 or 5 goals every single game. Do you understand? So that kind of thing really messed us over, but also a massive part of the difficulties we experienced, particularly at the beginning of the season, was there was a lot of talk about certain players being unsettled. Christian Eriksen, who ended up leaving, Toby Alderweireld actually did extend his contract eventually, but I still don't know about Jan Vertonghen. It's just, there's still a lot of, it improved when Mourinho came. The squad seemed more a unit. It sort of gelled together. But I think that's what got off as a terrible. That's the reason we got off to a terrible start. So before Mourinho came, it was like D minus even. It was completely horrible what we experienced. But as soon as Mourinho came in, it improved. Not the Spurs of old. I would say this team is still somewhat below what we saw peak Poch. But when you combine a D minus and I'd say a B since Mourinho came, I suppose I could give the guys a C plus. On the spending thing with Daniel Levy, before it was looking at us spending to want to push us over the edge because we're always so close to silverware, but we never get there. You know what I mean? Whereas now it's kind of like people were demanding you spend money to kind of, fix a problem within the team. It was a fundamental problem. That's why I'm not necessarily upset at Daniel Levy this time, at least, for not spending, because I don't think the problem was in the actual players and we need to buy this guy to replace this guy, because we had the players. It just wasn't gelling as a unit, which is where it went wrong, So that's my take on Spurs. I'm going to give them, this might be generous. You could argue a low C even, but I'm going to say C+. They fought back after a disastrous start to the season. So, yeah.
for you, what was the biggest downfall for Spurs? Like, was it the fact that, you know, it's in the relationship phase where, you know, it's 5 years with the missus, and, you know, coming up in 6 years, you know, you get a bit bored of her. Is it that with Pochettino, or is it more so that, you know, spending or injuries? What do you think? A bit just from the drop off from that Liverpool?
Yeah. Again, we could have spent more money, but that's in the past now. So it's all, you know, it's all well and good saying, yeah, we should have bought this guy, we should have had more squad depth, so that when these injuries come and when players are uncertain, we have a squad to rotate through, right? But we just didn't have that. And so when Pochettino was going through a tough time, certain players aren't performing, you know, he just didn't have anything to work with because, you know, like you said, Spurs don't want to spend money. And, you know, our bench was just non-existent. You know, when certain players aren't performing, you don't know who to play. And it's just like, you know, it was just a mess at the end of the day. I don't think it was anything to do with time. You know, again, Pochettino is a very skilled manager. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a top job anytime soon. I'm not going to say it was the player's fault or his fault. Like I said, you know, earlier, it's just the whole unit just wasn't working. And Poch I think it was the right reason. It was the right time for him to go, I suppose, because he just didn't know what to do with the squad at that point. And I guess Mourinho did. So
it finally got to Spurs as a team as a whole, in the sense that Spurs have always been really close to obtaining silverware. There's no lack of talent in the squad. You know, it's not like Spurs is a mid-table side. You know, they're a very good side with quality players. And every time they get close to silverware, they just slip up. You know, and I feel that frustration really came out this season, along with Poch and everything. Especially when it's something as big as a Champions League final. You know, I'm not going to bring up everything that happened. But as a Spurs fan or as a Spurs player, you know, you kind of get annoyed with not winning silverware, regardless of your guys' efforts. You know, they haven't had the worst season ever because of Mourinho. He's managed to bring them somewhere, but they've been poor this season. You know, there's no ignoring that fact. And for that, I'm gonna have to give them a D+. Yeah, D+ to a D, whichever way you want to flip it. I just feel as though they aren't necessarily like, there isn't one big reason as to why they're like this. You know, you can't say that there's no talent, that there's no goal scorers besides Kane, because Son is there as a goal scorer when Kane doesn't perform. Although Son hasn't performed as well this season, but he's there. You know.
Yeah, so I'll give it like a D. For example, like if like they had under Pochettino, that their downfall was huge. They after the Champions League, everything like. But I find the good thing about Tottenham is they have recovered with Mourinho under the manager. I think they were kind of lucky with with Kane coming back. If the Premier League does start back, he is going to come back. So that's going to be really important for Tottenham and then rise to the 5th spot, the Champions League. So in terms of that, like anything can happen for the next few games, next 10 games, 9 games. So yeah, I'm giving it still opportunity for Tottenham to get the Champions League spot, which they're looking for.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to agree. They've just it's been a really weird kind of season for them. I don't think they predicted that they would crash as badly as they did. I think it's been a culmination of a bunch of things. As Tando did say, they lack a bit of squad depth, and I also thought that their summer transfer window was kind of weird. Like they signed Lo Celso and didn't really utilize him, and then Ndombele did well, and I still think he's got a lot of talent, but also didn't quite cement himself into the team. And then Sessegnon was kind of injured and never really came in either. So I feel like they made signings, but they weren't really signings that they were in desperate need of. And now the fact that they've lost Eriksen, Kane was injured, and there was that whole dispute with Vertonghen and Eriksen, and that whole thing that caused the uproar. I just feel like there's been so many different factors, and I just think the dressing room is not in a happy place, and that's probably why. But yeah, compared to where they performed last season, I think they've fallen off more than any other top 6 team, and I think I'd then have to give them the lowest rating out of all of them, which would be D.
Maybe D minus, maybe even the E. I mean, Tottenham was on Tottenham, aren't they? Come so close yet so far. Recruitment hasn't been amazing. They've made a lot of signings, so obviously that's going to take some time for them to gel. Plus with the new manager as well. So you look at on a new signings basis, you've got Lo Celso and Ndombele. Steven Bergwijn came in January. He hit the ground running, but then got injured. It hasn't been pretty, but they've got a lot of hope. Kane's been in and out this season injured. I know because I keep having to sell him for fantasy football and then bringing him back in. Super Son's been nice. Maybe you were looking for a bit more of a contribution from Lucas Moura because he scored the hat-trick against Ajax, and then you really hope that would be his, springboard to just like becoming massively, successful or having a really productive season. But that hasn't happened. Eric Lamela is still at the team. I didn't even know he was still at Tottenham. I feel like there's a bunch of things going on here. But even though it is possible for them to get to Champions League, they have to go through Sheffield United, Wolves, and Manchester United. I mean, they haven't done so already in 29 games. So, is there much evidence that they're going to do it in the last 9 games? Not to me.
I'd say it's, I'd say a D, because if we're saying about top 6 and they're being 9th, you can't give it. I don't know if you can give anything higher than a D. And the fact that they should be doing a lot better than Chelsea with Aubameyang, and how they performed is just under par to what we've expected, and they've fallen so big from grace. But a D for me. Cam, what about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there. I think that doesn't seem to be gelling with Arsenal right now. I think their defense has always been a problem. Everyone knows they just don't seem to be making the correct signings. They just don't seem to care about their defense for some reason. I think Pepe was a good person to bring in, but he's obviously going to take some time to adjust. He's showing good glimpses, but he's struggling to get the end product kind of down now. But I do still think he's a really good player. It's just fun to kind of banter Arsenal fans about his end product. I think that will come, but they haven't replaced Ramsey, which I think was a really big loss in the midfield. And then I also just think that their defense, they need multiple signings in that department. But I think they do have some hope in the future if they just make maybe 2 or 3 more signings and then they start kind of rebuilding from the back forward, like what United are trying to do and what Liverpool did. But yeah, based on this season, I think I'm going to have to give them a D.
I'm going to go with the same. A D is for a top 6 side in your 9th, that's unacceptable. They just got 40 points. They're letting in too many goals, not scoring enough. And then the big wage bill as well. So for example, you got the Ozil scenario, and then you can't bring in players because of Ozil. So it's just a conundrum for Arsenal. It's probably Liverpool way back in when before the owners, where they didn't invest into the club, and then that's a similar situation with Arsenal, where it could be a 4 to 5 year rebuild where anything can happen. But I like the manager Arteta. He's going forward with the teams, but I would look for Arsenal to look at transfers centre backs. I think they got William Saliba come from Saint Etienne to Arsenal, so that could be good. But it's a rebuilding process for Arsenal, and it's not going to take. It's not overnight. It's going to be a long-term thing, man. So it's a D for me, man.
I think we're all being generous here, given where it should be really a fail this season.
I was going to say E, I was so.
But just jump into you, Rahat. Where would you go? Because you just said E, but.
Yeah, I mean, without Aubameyang, these guys would probably be in the relegation zone. It's just been a one-man team this season. It's just been Aubameyang. Nicolas Pepe, I think, nutmegged one of the Liverpool guys, and that's their second best highlight. And then I think, to round up their top 3 moments of the season, it would be Gnabry scoring against Bayern. Arsenal had nothing going for them this season. Right? So, just been E,
I agree.
Apart from Aubameyang, who's done bits for my fantasy team, and I hope maybe he goes to Chelsea and proves he's a better striker in the Prem than Drogba. But what have Arsenal got to say about their season?
I 100% agree with E. You got Ozil rating Tottenham D. You don't put Arsenal and Tottenham on the same level in terms of the season they've had. No, Arsenal have. Dude, ain't like that. No, the thing is though, we got a terrible start to the season. You guys have just been going downhill since. You rather have an improvement than go down where you guys go. It's literally getting worse. And the thing is, right, you guys had Unai Emery, he just got sacked, and now Arteta's here. You still not care. I wouldn't say you're losing, but He's not bagging points. He's just drawing games, right? Now you guys actually have to address the problems that's in your team rather than just blaming it on Arsene Wenger, who was before Unai Emery, who also got blamed for all the things that were going wrong for your team. So now you guys are getting an E, bro. And all of you are lying if you're saying it was actually D. They're worse than we were, and you know they were.
An E, and saying we shouldn't give Arsenal, based on their season, a D, because that's the same level as Tottenham, and you guys have been worse, apparently. What do you have to say to defend your team? And are there any good, apart from the individual highlights, are there anything else? Is there anything else that you feel positive about?
Personally, the one thing I want to stress about our team is that we don't really know who our best 11 is. So you can name like our best, 7, 8 maybe, but then in certain positions, there are players that that you don't know who to start, or rather who deserves to start over who. And I think we need to sign someone in the defensive midfielding role, maybe a backup wing as well. And maybe a backup right back, just to get started for like next season and everything. And in terms of the rating, I don't know, man. I mean, we're 1 point behind Spurs. As bad as we've been this season, and as bad as they've been this season, you can't give Spurs a D, then give us an E, you know. So if you gave Spurs an E, then sure. Personally, I'm gonna give them D. Yeah, because as poor as we've been, we do on occasion show character and fight back. Although there are games where we'd be leading the whole game and end up slipping up at the end, which is why we've got the most draws in the league. So it's just there's a whole lot of things that I can nitpick, you know, like just stupid mistakes that lead to goals, which force us to drop points and everything. Yeah, that's all I really have to say. I'd give them a D, maybe D plus if I want to be generous.
Yo, D plus.
I just want to stress the fact you guys have defensive issues, and you decided the solution to that is to bring in David Luiz.
No. Wait. The David Luiz signing, right? Or rather, what I see it as, it wasn't necessarily to solve all of our defensive issues. As David Luiz, as decorated as a defender he isn't the greatest defensive defender, if you know what I mean. I just feel like David Luiz was more of a signing as what's it called? Dressing room presence, you know. So he wasn't necessarily there to fix our defense instantly, but just to bring presence into the dressing room, you know, as David Luiz as a player.
Unai brought him in because he likes playing out from the back, but you know, and David kind of does have a good pass in him, but even now he's starting to buckle under the pressure, I think, and he's got slow and a bit tired. So even now, passing out from the back, he makes mistakes, and then he's never been good defensively, like you said. So it was just a banter signing.
But just a quick question to end round things off, a bit off topic. Tandor and Don, whose team has made more individual errors, player errors? Just out of curiosity, I haven't done the research, but who do you think? Do you want to say Arsenal? Like, why do you think Arsenal is making more errors?
I think Arsenal's defensive blunders are unmatched. I'm sorry, even as an Arsenal fan, when you're lucky now because Mustafi's not in the team, so it's gone down a little bit. But in terms of just stupid defensive errors, I think Arsenal wins. There's no way you can claim Spurs makes more dumb mistakes. Well,
I do. You answered too quickly because of Aurier, dude. Your Aurier is a waste.
Yeah, I said Serge Aurier is a problem. Aurier, that guy. Oh my word.
Hugo Lloris.
Oh. No,
yeah, Lloris
I think Arsenal. I don't know.
Usually Arsenal this season, I think it's closer, dude.
As much as Lloris and Aurier make gang mistakes, I have to agree to Arsenal. Yeah.
If we're talking about this season, it's comparable, but like historically, yeah, it's an Arsenal.
No. You can't say historically because your team has no history, bro. Like that's unfair.
I mean,
Right. That's where we will stop the podcast. But
I'm done.
yeah, thank you guys for listening to the podcast. It was really enjoyable, guys. And another time, would love to have you back.